Hello, friends, and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast with myself, Chris, and Stephen. And today, this episode is all about spirit guides. So we're going to be sharing the very best of our knowledge, experiences, because, I for one feel it's very, very important at this moment to talk about guides. There's a lot of, we're living in a wonderful time where there's so much information, but I feel what I've been sort of receiving and feeling within myself is what's important at the minute is what I'd call foundational knowledge, core knowledge. And that's something myself and you, Stephen, were privileged to have been able to receive a lot of that served us very well. So hopefully we could share that with our listeners.
Absolutely. And for years we sat in a home circles before we were mediums, before we were trance mediums, running the Purple Mountain and all the wonderful healing work that we do now. We sat in a home circle for about 8 years, just sat, meditated, asked questions, and that was our foundation. That was our foundation work, which now I feel has been so essential part of all our spiritual work, going back to those simple teachings.
Well, yeah, and as well, I think in the times of course, like workshops, courses, etc., are very important. But I think what gets lost sometimes within that home circle environment is the opportunity just to sit and talk, and actually people's wisdom comes forward in those conversations, even without realising. They start talking words, and you actually find through that journey those answers together, because the information comes in its right time. And probably, what I'd like to touch on today before we even get to anything is my thoughts and feelings on guides. I wouldn't say they've changed, but they've tweaked over the years, and we'll probably get to that.
You know what I think with that as well is that life is a journey, life is an experience, and you can tie this in with other things that's happening in the world now. Is that there is a lot of people, a lot of wonderful information out there in the world, and then there's a lot of garbage that is out. In my opinion, there is a lot of garbage out there, because I find that I call it parrot knowledge, is repeated knowledge that has no substance. So we're only sharing the teachings and the knowledge, not only that we've received direct from spirit, but also things that we have experienced, experienced with clients and feelings and emotions.
And I think that's what's important, and it was touched on with our previous episode with Gareth that we've just done.
Yeah.
Where and something that come through as a bit of a reminder when we had a sit-in with spirit and a sort of channeling trance session the other week was, it is important to do that inner work. And we've lived in this time, really the past 10 years, a lot of people have been doing that shadow work, inner work, but also not to take away personal responsibilities. There are energies out there in the physical and in the spiritual energies that don't want us to be connected to things like guides or to spirit. They want to break that connection. So, and we're drawn to what feels right. But for me, there is a lot of information out there that tries to break that connection, perhaps by saying your guide's an entity that you shouldn't be tapping into, etc. And hopefully, for those who might feel a little bit confused, we might be able, through our experience, to bring a bit of clarity. That's my hope for the session today. And when we have these chats, me and you always learn something new as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that we're very clear on the work that we do here is we don't work with illusions, we don't work with fear, we don't work with distortions, we work with truth.
We don't
and that in the inner truth. And I just want to add here as well is, I think why we are having this conversation is because there is a lot of confusion out there. There is a lot of people that are doubting, rightly so. I think also, going back to the time of Aquarian, which is all about the inner guru, where the time of Piscean, which was all about the outer guru, worship, religion. I think for a lot of years, and we got brought up in the spiritualism movement as such. So we saw a lot of the toxic side there, which was all about worshipping spirit or seeing spirit as somebody that we go to. Well, so let me finish just really quick, because I think it's a really important point. I think that's where the confusion is, because it's something that we teach here, which is all about starting with self. If know about thyself, go within thyself, things like meditation, all the answers within. I think there's a lot of emphasis of, I'm just going to connect with anybody, I'm going to connect with the angels. And I think the first sign of development is start with self first.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more of a trap that's in the spiritual movement that must have been set out almost as part of the divine plan, in a way. And I think that's where I always say, I've said it a million times, the sweet spot's always in the middle. So we must be careful, one, not to disconnect ourselves from our guides, those who are there to inspire us, leave little breadcrumbs and signs and offer their unconditional love in a non-judgmental way, but also not fall into the old patterns of religion, of worship. This person's going to take this away.
Absolutely.
As very simply as we know, is nobody's coming to save you, but there is an encouragement from those who know you and love you, be it in spirit or here, that you save yourself.
And I think this is where, going back to the healing side, why I think anybody that wants to know about guides or tap into the guide, do the healing work on yourself, because there's always that danger, that fear of projecting unhealed parts of self, that you think that spirit are going to come in to rescue, take things away. Yet things like personal responsibility, doing that inner work is so foundational.
I think I feel it's important. Absolutely, I feel you're right in what you're saying, but also that could be a bit of a trap as well, in saying, well, if I do A, B and C, I'm going to connect with my guide. And I actually feel sometimes it can take away the natural aspect. Say, for example, you're sat there in a circle and just naturally a channeling process starts happening within that circle. It's meant to be in the certain guide you become aware of. For me, where it starts is you dedicated yourself to that work, and naturally, you know, when they say the student is ready, the teacher appears. So people step forward. So it's not like there's not a formula. For me, it's about how much you're willing to dedicate yourself, and with any sort of spiritual work, I think it's the same amount that you put in is always going to be matched. So if you put your 50% in, spirit will be there.
I think that's important as well. I think that there can be this, particularly in any line of spiritual work, of expecting spirit to sort everything. And I think you're absolutely right. Something we learned very early days in our development, which is we do our 50%, spirit do their 50%, not that they do 80 and we just do 20. And also, what's very important, and I say this all the time, we don't work for spirit, we work with spirit, because we are spirit as well.
100%. And that's what they want. You know, taking it away from us for a moment, they don't want that. And quite often, and this is going a little bit off subject, say for example in clairvoyance, people might say, why doesn't, if my mum's there, come through and say you need to do this, that and the other, that problem will be solved. And very simply, that would be interfering in lessons and part of your life experience. So why do they leave breadcrumbs, anyone in the spirit world? Because they're just trying to show you where to look but not what to see. They're trying to show you things from a bit of a higher perspective, you know, where there might be little traps, you're getting stuck here a little bit. What about this perspective? And that's what's offered. But
also going a little bit deeper than that is understanding that you are a soul, a spirit that have come back to this vibration, this earth school, to learn specific lessons or to have this physical experience. And in order for you to be on that journey, if your guides and your ancestors stepped in every Tom, Dick and Harry to say, don't do that, don't do this, you would never learn those lessons. So their quietness is not a weakness. It's not to say, oh, we're just going to leave you on that path, we're just going to let you fall, we're just going to let you stumble.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the hardest part of unconditional love is to say, I've every faith in my brother or sister, my son, daughter that's come back to the earth to have this experience. They will get there no matter how long it will take.
Well, this is the thing. They know, you know, on the river, they know where the river's leading, they know where the source is, where we only see the next bend in the river. You know, so this is where that guidance can be very good in a way, and you can always tell. You know, it's something that was picked up on the previous episode, actually, when I was listening to it back, doing some of the, you know, just checking it over, where Gareth mentioned this, and often when guidance comes through from spirit, or it might be a teacher that we met here, somebody who's guided us, it's not always what we want to hear. Very, very often it's not, because it's coming from a place of truth. And truth, as we touched on in that episode, all three of us, doesn't pamper your ego. Truth doesn't come in to say how wonderful you are. Truth just is.
It's interesting that, because it just brought back a couple of memories when our circle teacher Anita sadly passed away, and Roy was leading the circle, and he was the one that was leading the circle. Anita was the channeler, and when that channeling stopped, I was developing during that time, if you can remember, but a lot of things had to change. And when Albert started bringing a different type of teaching, channeling into the circle, a lot of people got triggered, because it was and I remember Albert saying, we work with truth. We work with that truth. And you remember there was a lot of people that left circle that didn't want to perhaps move forward. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, when we look at your intuition never tells you, oh, you're doing something right. Your intuition always tells you there's something not right. And I think with spirit, they work with truth, they work with love. And sometimes it makes me feel uncomfortable, but good. When you get uncomfortable, it's where the real learning, where you're real willing to step out of that comfort zone. And your guides are not here to feed your ego.
Well, it's like in those moments, whether it involves somebody else's situation or just yourself. And I think the more you experience it, any sort of hardship, it's going to pass, and I'll be all the better for it, you know, when I come out the other end. But as we come back, the title of this episode is Do Spirit Guides Exist? So really, I suppose it would be a good place to start off with our understanding of guides. For example, you know, what form do they take? How could we perceive our guides? What would that connection look like? And you know, who are they?
Well, there's many questions you've asked for that. Number one, for the record, I wholeheartedly believe that there is guides, helpers, workers on behind the scenes that are assisting us, that are guiding us, that are protecting us as our journey, but also value the importance of non-interference, because there is a universal law called free will. So when we have free will, you know, I remember Albert saying to us, if I had to come in and help Chris and interfere with Chris's life, then we would have to do that with everybody's lives. And I can also understand on our perspective, when you go back home to spirit and your guide said, well, I helped you there, did this, did that, and you went, oh, I didn't learn the lessons, I have to come back even harder next time.
Exactly.
So they come from a very higher unconditional love perspective. So what form do they come? Well, you know, they come in different forms. In my personal experience, they've come in the times when I've been the lowest in my life, where I've had really bad grief, where I've really felt stuck, and I've needed in that moment perhaps a spirit sign. And again, it's not that they're coming in to interfere, and this is an important message. When you see those spirit signs, the knock on the door, or the white feather, or the bird that keeps coming to your door. And I'm going to share a couple of stories with everybody shortly about spirit signs, because we've worked as mediums for a long time, and we've listened to maybe thousands of clients that we work with, and so we've come in from experience here.
Everybody's got a story once you open it.
Everybody's got a story, and I think the message here is when I know that I'm not alone in that moment, that whatever I'm feeling, grief, pain, sadness, anger, and I feel a gentle touch on my arm, that automatic feeling of everything's gonna be all right, Stephen, that gives me a sense of pride, a sense of strength, that not being alone, I will get through this. So they're not coming in to say, Stephen, go left, go right, go around that house, do this, do that, because spirit will never tell you how to be or what to do. I would question who you're working with if someone says that. But how powerful is it, Chris, when somebody says, I'm here for you, brother, I'm here for you? I mean, how do you feel when you have that?
Well, I think the feeling that comes forward is you're not on your own. A lot of people find this work at possibly the lowest point. I know I did. And we were fortunate enough, our guides were given to us, really, the names. But I have every faith in that scenario, in the circle, that it was needed at the time. It was like a rope being thrown down a little bit, saying, you know, this is going to be helpful. And it didn't change what came ahead, didn't make it any easier.
Of course it didn't.
But in the moments when perhaps you don't see light around you, that it gives you that glimmer. And I think that's good to know. It's good to know you're not judged, that connection's there. Because another thing is, a lot of people will say, I don't really connect with my family. I didn't have a connection with my family. So when people looking for the spirit connection with family, they'll say, well, I didn't really connect with my family that much. And that's where a guide can be even more essential. And a lot of people, which we've not touched on yet, actually are aware of the guides from being a child as well. A lot of people where I've been aware of this person, I've been aware of a certain name throughout my journey. So if you have that conversation, they would have had a feeling. And some people might have seen the guide. They might have just had a feeling, hairs going on the back of my neck. I just get a sense someone who's around. They might have had a spirit sign where a certain song comes on, numbers. That's
you talk about synchronicities and spirit signs from spirit, but they don't always come from guides. They can be from loved ones as well.
100%. But specifically talking about guides today, what I'd like to mention there is there's not one road leads to the place, that we all perceive in a different way. So something that's important to remember, specifically with guides, is comparison is a thief of joy. Don't compare yourself. If your friend comes in and go, I saw a 6-foot Egyptian at the end of my bed last night, you might be perceiving in a different way. With a lot of clients who I do readings for at the minute, what is happening a lot with people is they're actually experiencing things more in dream state in terms of connecting with the guides as well.
Well, dreams is a great way, because during the day we're so busy. Not that spirit are not due with us in the morning or during the day, but we've got physical lives, we've got jobs, and in the evening is where our vibrations is more harmonious. And a lot of people are connecting through the astral, and the veil between that frequency is opening a lot more. And there's more people now that are so-called awakening to, or becoming aware, let's change the word awakening, become a lot more aware to that there is something more. So that curiosity opens up that crown a little bit, and it's a wonderful way of loved ones and guides to say, just putting their finger here, oh, there's something here. But I just want to share everybody with just a story of a client that I work with, and this is why even in clairvoyance, never assume that the reading's going to go from A, B, C, because this gentleman, all he wanted to hear was a confirmation of experience that you had as a young boy. And straight away, you would assume that you would have his granddad, his grandma and his mum that came through. They did later on. But straight away I said, I really need to share this with you, but I don't think you can understand this in the physical. And I said, this Chinese gentleman with this grey beard coming through, and he's wearing this gown, and I described him. And he's talking about sitting at the edge of your bed. And he said, that's what I wanted to hear, because when I was a young boy, this Chinese man, this Oriental man, would sit at the edge of my bed, and straight away, for whatever reason, he needed to come through in that moment to give that confirmation and that clarity. And he said that's helped him so much. And this is a 50-year-old man here that I'm speaking about, that he wanted to hear from his mum, but needed to hear that confirmation from his guide. And I know from my own personal experience, I have a feeling, an imprint that I built up a relationship. So when I feel a warm hand on my left arm, I know that is my guide that is close. And I felt him, I think, 3 times. One, when I had to put my cat to sleep, Freddie, do you remember? And it was incredibly traumatic, and the grief that I felt so deeply, and I sat there on top of it. Then I had to pay for the death of my cat then, and I leaned over and I had this imprint, and all I had this feeling was, you're going to be all right, Stephen. And sometimes I think as a guide, that's all you need to hear. I think we live in a society, we live in a world where everybody's trying to give an opinion, everyone's trying to give an advice, tell you how to be or not to be. And sometimes it's nice for someone to say, I'm here for you, I'm listening, I'm just by your side.
And I'm not here to take anything away, because they respect the experience. But I think you touched on something very important there, which is quite often in clairvoyance work, it's sort of taught that guides aren't evidence, and I would actually disagree with that. And maybe 5-6 years ago I would have agreed with it, because what I've experienced is just that, where people can come and say, well, actually I know my mum, dad are there, or whoever, but I've been waiting because I've been picking up I've been seeing this person, you've just described them the same, so you brought through. Now, is that not as much evidence as any for that person? So, in a way, it's probably a different subject, but how do you measure evidence? Actually, it's specific to the person at that moment. It could be a multitude of things. But I think with guides should never be dismissed, because quite often, actually, beyond even what you call the spiritual movement, people are aware. Some people call them guardian angels, and there's different names, and really, they don't care what label you put on. That's just for our understanding, really. I think it is great if you're able to connect with your guide in terms of a name, because the name is quite specific. Should you give yourself a hard time if you don't have a name? I don't think you should, because as you mentioned, it's all incremental. But don't sit there and suffer as well. I know you've advised a few people where they'll go, oh, this, that, and the other. And went, were you asking? You being honest? He's saying, are you asking these questions? Are you speaking them out? And I think that steps away from this thing of, that worship. Ask the question, be truthful. It is welcomed.
Well, we have that in trance readings, don't we? With something that we say before we start the trance reading, we say to the client, speak to them as if you're speaking to us. We're friends. Who's to know that you were not the man with the beard sat on the rock under the tree and guiding that person in their previous life, but you've just come back to this time period to have this experience. Who you just don't know. But for me, I know you mentioned about names, and it's a good thing to get into now. My opinion, that yes, from an ordinary perspective, yes, names aren't that important. But I find that in my journey, my development, giving a guide a name has strengthened, in my perception, my connection even more deeply with my clairvoyant guides in particular, or my doorkeepers, my helpers. What I've now progressed to is the sense of inner knowing, and that inner knowing has really built that inner light, which is my greatest protection, and strengthened my connection with spirit. I just know that they are there.
And what's really important with your senses is, not all that glitters through the visual eyes is gold. So really, it's always trust your feelings, because like we said, there's a lot of information out there. Who are these people connected with? Guides are entities we shouldn't be welcoming in. But and you must be very discerning about what energies you welcome in. I must say that I 100% agree with that. We must be discerning. I see and hear far too much of that. And even from our early days in Circle, there was a story mentioned from the Circle leaders there about somebody who said, well, I welcome anyone. And I thought, you welcome anyone, you're getting everyone from all different vibrations. It's like leaving your door open at night. So really, just for everyone listening here, for my understanding about guides is that they are what we call, to separate things, we call them our one true guide. And they really elect with us to walk this life with us from the moment we reincarnate to the moment we pass back to the spirit world, to when we return home. And they might be someone as well who we have a deep connection with from a past life. They might be part of what we call a soul group. And a soul group really is like-minded vibration, so and could be up to thousands. So I feel that's a good way to mention to everyone here. That's how to sort of separate things when we start talking about, on the other hand, clairvoyant guides, healing guides, inspirers, which can be people that sort of come and go in your journey as well.
Well, just very simply, it depends on what work you're doing. You're not going, if I know it sounds thinking, if you're somebody that's listening, you're just a cleaner. I'd say just a cleaner, or you're working. We started in hospitality management. But if you're aware of them, that's fantastic. You're tuning into their frequency. It's not essential. Everybody tunes in differently, but everybody's on their own different path. So again, don't compare. Do I have a clairvoyant guide, healing guide? Wow, I work with clients who want to start off with healing, and I said, well, it's come out in the reading. I said, there's a lot of healing capabilities here. You want to serve, you want to get into crystal healing, and the client will say, yes, I want to get into crystal healing. I said, well, I've got this guide coming in here, and they're saying that you're ready to take that step back. That's when perhaps a healing guide will make themselves aware, because there is an interest in healing.
Yeah, and I think certainly what's important to know as we talk about our guide that walks with us, we say walks with us to the left, we're always connected. And I feel like they're always there. They might be a little bit further in the background as other work's going on, but we are always connected that way. And that's not always in a physical sense, but we're always there. And somebody, it was mentioned many years ago that you would notice it more if they weren't. You'd be more aware of it because you've always had that connection. So I think that's important information, that everyone out there, you've got that connection. It's there.
All you have to do is tap into it,
and it can be called upon, and this is because as we reach out in these conversations, with anyone listening there, perhaps you're not even involved in clairvoyance, healing, anything like that. You've got a guide still, and that guidance is for your life journey first of all, and if you really feel stuck, if you really feel in a corner, and you're like, I really could do with a bit of knowing or assistance. In my experience, as long as it's not every 2 minutes, which is a bit of a trap, those signs will be given. It's been given to me many times. I've over the years, I've had moments where I've gone, oh, I really don't get this, and just be a little sign that's given that I'll just know, and it might be the slightest thing, and I thought, oh yeah, right, back on track. And sometimes, like was mentioned earlier, guides, they're not going to, you might feel, that's interesting, and I think you might understand this, is you might feel at moments almost abandoned on your journey. Because you're going through something, you're going, oh, where are they? What's going on? But actually, they're almost at the finish line going, I know they're going to make it through this. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. They've set it out, but they're going to be all the better when they come out the other side.
At the end of the day, I mean, anybody that's listening and want to what we're talking about here, your one true guide, just liken your one true guide being your best friend, your best pal, and they will know you more than you know yourself. They know your strength, they know your soul contract, they know your purpose, they know why you've meet certain people. So instead of going from I'm the victim and blaming everybody and blaming spirit for my life and my life's so bad, yes, we all have trials and tribulations. None of our lives are easy. As you've said, Chris, we've been involved in this work for 20 odd years. Is our life any easier? No, it isn't. Yeah. But our sense of awareness has given us the strength and the courage not to give up, to continue. And our guides will know that, and they will only... I think we would tune into them unconsciously when we need them the most, when we need that spirit sign.
I think this would be a good time to tap into that, because we mentioned about the discernment side and a little bit of the traps that can happen. But on the other side of things, how do we recognise wisdom when it's coming through? How do we recognise that it's coming from your guide? How would you recognise it? How would you discern from your own consciousness or thoughts of the mind? How would you know?
Well, the first thing how I would know is and I'll be controversial here, I think again it's very, very rare, in my opinion, that my guide has stepped in and spoken to me. I've seen him, I've felt him, I've sensed him. It's empowering me to trust my inner voice. Again, it comes to what everybody's come back to learn. I'm just talking from my own personal experience. Everybody's got their own journey, their own experience. So it's distinguishing the difference between the outer voice and the inner voice. So
that was the question. So how do we, if we look at, you've got your inner voice, your true consciousness, the mind. So how do we decipher? Have you had an experience where and you're like, oh, that's guidance coming in?
It's actually a recent experience that I've received, not one from my true guide. It was in the circle, a few months back, and we were running our home circle, and we were sharing some knowledge on reincarnation. And I sat there, and there was these feelings that was triggered in me, this frustration, thinking this is my ego part of the mind, and I openly talk about this. I've still got things to learn, and I've still got triggers. I thought they're not understanding. I wanted to quicken their understanding, certain people in the circle, about some of the teachings I'm trying to share here. And there was this really strong voice that come in from, and I knew it wasn't my inner voice, this inner voice, and it come from like this above energy, and it said, Stephen, you can't force understanding. Sit back and allow the discussion. And I was trying to force the discussion. I was trying to force understanding. And straight away, I felt this feeling of humility. Because I knew in that moment, that's not my voice. That is somebody saying, reminding me, Stephen, remember, you can't force understanding.
Well, I think
and that really humbled me. And I've had a few other experiences where it's, because what is the energy? You talk about wisdom. Strip wisdom away. Wisdom is truth. That's all that wisdom is. So if truth comes in, like you said, oh, that stung there. Oh, that stung. I didn't like that. But then you think about it, you know, they're right there actually. They're right. And I've had that experience many times where I've sat there and I've been humbled by spirit, but definitely that outer voice is coming. And many times I've experienced that through dreams as well, where I've had different guides.
We're going on to a few different, you need to slow up a bit, because viewers will be watching going, whoa, one subject after another. But what's important to pick up on there that you answered is you knew. And I think you've given the whole key to everything to that question for me, that you said you just knew in that moment. And I think, do you know when they say, when you know, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in that moment, I had a powerful experience years ago where they actually involved, you know, getting over involved or trying to help people too much, trying to rescue people. And I sat there in meditation, it was before reading, and I got shown this pool of, it was like a syrupy or tar substance, and a hand was going in, and as the hand pulled back, it all little bits were stuck. And it said, every time you get over involved in people's lives, that's what you're doing. It can stick. And I could shut my eyes and I still get that image today. And for me, that was some truth coming through of, wasn't telling me what to do, but it was showing me. It was saying, remember. And I thought, oh yeah, straight away. And this is the other side, that you don't take it personal because you know. So actually, you know, when you said it's tapping into something you already know, that's why you don't take it personal in the long term. I mean, we've received teachings over the years, even when we used to be in circle, we used to get in the car and go, I don't get that. Oh. And then a week later, you'd be like, oh yeah, once it's settled in. And I think that's a good way to recognise truth. It might sting a little bit at first, might.
Triggers your beliefs, false belief systems.
And ego, to me, having your belief systems rocked a bit, in a way I welcome it, because that's progression, that's growth. Things can become stagnant, you know, things can become safe.
But I think as well, not everybody, let's be real here, not everybody will accept that in that moment. No. I think having the emotional maturity, or that certain form of conditioning to have that ability to be aware when actually I've got that wrong there, and my false belief system's been triggered and this truth has been brought in here. But like we talked about in the garden before, when we sat in the garden, had a cup of tea, life's a journey. We can't force experience. It takes time, and not everybody's ready to tap into those energies. But going back to, I want to mention really quickly about discernment, because you touched upon that quite deeply, is that very simply, there's too many people out there in the world now that are tapping into energies that they do not understand. Yeah. And one thing that I feel incredibly passionate about is that spirit are not going to come in. The Palladians, the Atlanteans, these guides, these higher beings are not going to come in and save the earth.
Yeah.
We're here to step into the sovereignty of our own self as the collective consciousness.
In fact, it's quite the opposite. And for anybody who's ever read the book The Bringers of the Dawn,
very good book,
is a really good example of this, of saying actually what can happen is that because we are giving our power away, the government's going to save me, the next prime minister's going to save me, God's going to save me. What we will do then is, when those energies come, we could actually manifest where they come, and they're going to be like the new government in a way.
The new gods.
Because we were saying we are powerless. And I know you probably experienced this. I've had a few experiences in deep meditations or healing practices. And the rare times I probably could count on one hand that I have encountered what we'd say higher beings, ascended masters, whatever you want to perceive them as. They have always said, never bow to me, I am your equal, we are equal. So I feel like that's important. But what I wanted to touch on, what you mentioned there, in that discernment, I feel that's where certain practices can be helpful in terms of meditation, also healing as well, seeking out others we feel comfortable with who can identify our blind spots that we know are already there. So that's where some of these practices, if you are involved in the work, I actually feel it's very healthy to go right outside of your zone, and if you feel comfortable with somebody to receive information or them to sort of hold space for you in a way, that's a very healthy practice when you're on your journey as well.
It's something that I wholeheartedly advise anybody. If you're really interested and you want to know more about self-development, join a humble home circle. Circle work's key. You talk about the old pioneers, the old teachings of some of the amazing channelings of Silver Birch, who talked about reincarnation. Some what are called modern spiritual development all started in humble home circles.
Yeah, and I think that's where I talked about at the beginning, and what I really want to do a bit of a series on. We'll be talking about reincarnation in a future episode.
Yeah.
Because what I'm feeling at the moment, what we were privy to that served us very well, is core spiritual knowledge. And don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of admiration actually for people who are out there doing it, on trying to find the way. Nobody's bad or getting it wrong. They're just finding the way on this journey, and perhaps they've not found that like-minded group. Perhaps they've had a few bad experiences where they don't feel they want to be in groups and such. But I feel like finding that right circle, finding that right situation, take time. Don't be too quick. I want to do this. Don't be too... This is going to sound a bit upside down. You know what I want to say? Don't be too quick to want to share your gifts. Know what they are first. And get that core. And that core, never mind anyone else, will serve you well down the road. Because what can quite often happen if you don't have that core, that foundation, can really affect what you're going to do. So take your time. It's not a race. Take your time to ground. Get that core teachings, get that information wherever you feel will resonate, because as you mentioned, it's already there, 100%. When you meet people in a circle or different walks of life, you might find teachings that you don't resonate with, and you find them that you do. But it's all part of the journey, isn't it? It's all part of your makeup, and behind the scenes, mentioning guides, your guides will sort of be nudging in the right direction and trying to help bring certain things about that are going to be helpful.
But also, I'm a firm believer that there is no right or wrong path as such. I find that where you are in that moment, regardless of other people's perception and judgment and opinion, you are there exactly for a reason, for your highest good. So you're not reared off the wrong path. I think sometimes, your guides, they're not there. You're not on a leash. Your guides aren't there. They're not behind you, in front of you. They stand side by side. With your guide, they never ever. This is such an important message. Your guide never ever judge you.
Yeah.
You could murder somebody, they'll never ever judge, because they have unconditional love, don't they? They have unconditional love. But the big thing is, we talk about spiritual gifts, is don't run before you can walk.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so be you know, we talk about experience here. Before I developed as a clairvoyant medium and went out to churches and centres, we learned about, we didn't have to, we chose to turn up every single week into the circle around our physical life. We made that commitment every single week to sit in that home circle and to develop. And we didn't understand it. We just sat, we meditated, we asked questions, we were curious. A big thing you talk about, Chris, the importance of curiosity, being curious. Don't just, and this is a good thing with spiritual discernment, don't just assume I'm just going to connect. Be curious. How do you feel with this energy?
Well, what I want to say, and something I want to get across with this a little bit, we can deepen that connection, but we're always connected. And it's actually through the forgetfulness of being connected, through the amnesia of the reincarnation, that we forget. So we're actually always connected to our guides, but we can deepen that connection. We can bring a remembrance through certain tools, but also just living our lives as well, you know, and living our lives authentically and truthfully. You know, there isn't, I can't say this enough, there's not one path. Nobody's, for me, going to write a book and go, if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll know everything about your guide. But also, ask yourself, why do I want to know?
So for me,
that's a good question.
It's just a simple thing. Anybody that's watching this podcast for the first time, in this episode, you've subconsciously been drawn to this episode to maybe think, actually, I want to know a little bit more about my guide. We have that with readings. I don't know why I'm here, but I know that I'm drawn here. I know nothing about spiritual work, but I'm drawn here. So we're all of the spirit. We're all connected, aren't we?
100%. And we all, I can't say that enough, we all have a spirit guide. 100%, and how we perceive that, but they do play a role, but that role gets a little bit muddled, as we've already mentioned a few times, but they can really assist in reminding us of the core wisdom we carry, and they're there for us. You know, sometimes people put on Facebook that my spirit guide's done a runner because times are tough. Well, actually they're there when the times are tough. That's when they're most needed, and not to come in and take that pain or that suffering in that moment away. They're there just to say, I am here, you're not on your own, I'm here.
And just going back to about reincarnation, you know, at the end of the day, the earth is a school, and many of us have come back to have easier lives. Some people have come back to have tougher lives. Depends on your curriculum, depends on your class. Are you university? You know, they say Earth is a university, so that when you're at uni, lessons are going to be harder. And something that I've wholeheartedly open and talk about this, that I had a spiritual ignorance and arrogance about me, which is, well, I'm a medium and I'm a trance medium and I know everything, and geez, did I know nothing. And I come to learn very early on, through humility, that actually one of the reasons why I am doing this spiritual work is to pay off some karma and some psychic debt
important
that I've accumulated over the years.
That's really important to mention, because quite often, and I wanted to touch on this, that people might look and go, well, I'm in the spiritual work or I'm awakened, but everybody's where they're meant to be, you know, on their particular journey. It don't, you know, humility is really important, and actually a lot of us are in this spiritual work because we've got things to learn, you know, that's most important.
And there was only recently, we not talking about names here, recently we did a trance circle, and there was a couple there, and the lady was very into the spiritual work and her husband wasn't as much, but I found that he had such a more of a deeper connection with his guides through his experiences. So never compare. And actually some of the people that I've met on my journey is really wowed me by their connection. They've actually got such a lovely connection. Don't compare yourself. So talking a bit about personal experience, Chris, what is, tell me a little bit about your spirit guide. You talked about Anita gave you the name of your spirit guide, and I know since then it is very rare that people are given their names. Why do you think that is?
I think, what would I do is with this, I trust that it's being given for a reason.
Yeah.
So I don't think things are given without purpose. I think you have to do your work, you have to do your part. But really, I sort of found this work at a very, I guess you'd call it a low time. I wouldn't look at it then, you know, it was just a time of learning. I was going through a lot of stuff. And so it was obviously needed, and you know that would help me for what's to come. You know, and I think if you've done the work, and that could be measured in a million different ways, that will be given. It's not given for no reason, because I've seen it the other way where people have asked and said, "Well, you're not quite ready to receive that."
But why not? Why are you not ready then? You know,
interesting. Maybe I don't know. I don't know actually. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say with that.
I personally think that with any kind of awakening, you have to awaken at the right time. And that sounds egotistical, and I've seen this in many visualizations, and the way Spirit showed it to me, which was like a beehive, and you've got little babies in the little cocoons there, and you have the bee going over, oh, this bee's ready, we're going to awaken this bee, this spirit's not ready. So anybody has to be ready at that right time. And I find that even with me and you, was I ready to receive the knowledge that I learned 5 years ago, 20 years ago? I wouldn't. It would have blown my head off.
Yeah, and I have to say another thing. When I was given that name, I didn't really understand the gravity of it all at the time. I almost took it a little bit lightly, because I didn't understand at that moment. But it's just served me very well at the time, you know.
But do you not remember though, when I sat there and I remember talking,
you always used to see my guy more than me.
I know, and I think we got confused with our guide. But I remember being in the car after that first circle night and witnessing trance, and we were given our names of our guides, and I have to say the feeling was like pride. Oh, I've got a spirit guide. I've got someone by my side.
Makes you feel a bit special.
It does.
There's nothing wrong with that, you know.
It does, and I remember having a card reading from Anita from tarot cards. We did it a couple of times over a few months, and it was my turn that week to receive a message from the card. It was great. You sat there listening to Anita, and she was giving you a message. She said, "Oh, I've got your guide coming in. Described the Chinese. It's called Chi Chang Li." I said, "I know that." And coming in, and he was holding this big copper pot in his hand, and it was hot, and he was showing me this was about me, which was about discipline, calmness, order. And you know what I'm like. I'm a Captain Chaos with my energies. So he understood, you know, some of the lessons I've come to learn, and he's going to help me, guide me, support me. And what your guide can also do, Chris, is that your guide would be like a liaison person, spirit, that will say, well, something's going off with Chris, but I know some friends in the spirit world that might help Chris in that moment.
Or the other way, they might, in a way, in a sense, keep a bit of order, in the sense of, oh, they're not quite ready for that at this moment in time, you know, or so that knowing of you, that connection is very powerful. And in a way, it's not really their role to protect you, but in that way, it is protective. And the unconditional love is naturally protective.
Because at the end of the day, you like with the plant, you can't water it or give it more sunshine to make it grow any quicker. You have to, at different times, at different periods, people would be ready to receive that knowledge of those teachings.
Well, the way you can look at it is, because it's silly, isn't it, really, if you look at it. We're there and we go, oh, God, this is awful. Please come in and take it away. Oh, no. And our guides are looking, laughing, probably going, oh, it'd be all right. Just need to go through this last bit of this lesson. You'll get there.
Yeah.
And they sit back, they're smiling. And, you know, we talked about this in the last few episodes. We talked about this a lot in Circle recently. Don't take your life too seriously. So I suppose they're able to bring that gravity in, where we think we're in the depths of despair, and they're actually looking, going, oh, this is going to do you wonders when you come out the other side.
I'm going to share this funny story, and you know about this, that recently we had this amazing weekend experience, a journey, and I know what I'm like. I know myself very well, of my patterns, that I am like a tornado, and I need to learn a little bit more about gracefulness. That's a big lesson about gracefulness. Yeah. Silent as assassins, Steve, not stomping like a tree trunk. And we get all het up, and we get so worried about life, don't we? Take life so serious. And this beautiful brown bear strutting. This is such a deep meditation, strutting over me. And he sat there, leaned back, and he had a big joint in his hand. Stephen, you just need to chill out. You and Chris, just put your feet up.
That'd be good.
And I just think you're absolutely right. You know, it's Spirit reminding us this is not all real. You're gonna get out of it. You're gonna look back on this life and think, "Wow, I'm glad that wasn't real, but I'm glad I've had that experience."
And I think that's a really good sort of footnote to round things up on. Of don't take your journey, even your journey with connecting. It's good to have curiosity and also have commitment. The 2 C's are very important. Those keep coming to me at the minute. But I mean, heck, enjoy it. Please enjoy it.
Have fun.
Take time to laugh, to smile, get in like-minded groups. You know, have fun. We are here to enjoy this experience on the earth. And if something comes up, know you're not on your own. If you're out there and you perhaps have a perception that you don't have a guide, you will have someone there, you know, and that connection is always there. You mentioned animals, we even have, you know, animal guides, don't we? But perhaps that's for another episode at another time. But I feel that's a good note and very important at the minute. Enjoy your journey. You know, there's no one road to anything. There's your road, your path. Everybody you meet, be it perceived good or bad, they're all brought to you for a reason.
And your spirit guide, when you do know their name and you do see them, you do feel them. I just want to share this final story with everybody.
Yeah.
I remember being at an Oldham Spiritualist church, and you were doing the service, and there was an open circle after. And I sat behind, I was just sitting meditating, and I always said to Spirit, "I'm off tonight." And Spirit said, "No, you're not, you're working tonight." I was like, "All right." "No, I'm not, I'm off tonight, Stephen." and I sat there, and this girl must have been 18, 19. And he said, "You need to go to her and tell her about her Native American Indian guide," and gave me his name. I went, "I can't give that, that's not evidence." "Trust, Stephen, trust." So as we stood up, she turned around and said, "I'd like to come to you." And she started bursting out crying. And she said, "I've been asking for 3-4 months. I want to connect with my spirit guide. And that's all I've come today. I know my nan's all right. I know my granddad's all right. I just needed to hear that, Stephen. You've really helped me." And I had a lovely chat with her after. And she said, even though other people might have not seen that as physical evidence, it really helped her in that moment, knowing that. And that really gave her such upliftment. So never underestimate.
Yeah.
And when you do connect with your spirit guide, I know in my heart they will smile and they'll have so much pride, because their love for you, I'm going to say this again, their love for you is no like any other type of love. Boundless. They are your best friend. They love you unconditionally. They never judge you. And they will always be by your side through darkness and through light.
Yeah, it's important just to remember that connection of being very important in your journey as well, you know. And there is, in my thoughts, a lot of misinformation out there.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there is such misinformation out there?
I think what's happening is, I think because of distortions in what we call the New Age movement a little bit, where it's going too overboard in worshipping entities that are coming in and everyone wants to be a channel. I think that there is the opposite. There's always opposites, isn't there?
Yeah.
And the opposite is you don't know you're tapping into, which in a way they're kind of speaking truth, but in another way what they're doing is completely rejecting everyone then and saying, well, you shouldn't be connecting with anyone. Whereas in between, yes, your guides are there, be discerning though. And particularly, which we might touch on in another episode, is channeling. You know, always know who you're working with. Somebody's coming through your door. Who are you? What's your energy?
Oh, you know what? The way you just described that was just what I was thinking. Yeah. Would you let anybody in your house?
No.
And treat that, I think that is, I'm going to write that down in my book actually, that don't let anybody in your house. It's title of my book.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris is the copyright. Is treat that exactly how you would treat your any kind of spiritual work or even life. Don't just assume.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody just in through your door. Yeah. Question, be curious. And you know what? On the other side, I don't think your guides would expect otherwise.
No.
Your guide would expect you to be curious.
And that's where perhaps we're breaking away from part of you know, this thing of worship and, oh, they're not going to be happy and all that, just doesn't exist. That's mind stuff. It
really Are you talking about when people say, oh, my guides are not happy with me?
My guide might be disappointed, I'm going to let them down. You can let them down for all the money in the world, because they know when you take a certain step that it's going to be for your enrichment. They're happy. They'll go, oh, sometimes they might go, you'll stay in that pool, you'll keep paddling away, you know, and you'll get your way out of it, and they'll be sat at the edge of the pond or whatever, you know, probably with a fishing rod going, I'll just wait for you.
Yeah, I remember, talk about another story. I remember sat there in a deep healing ceremony a long time ago, and I'm sat there and I'm sat there and I'm feeling sick and I feel sorry for myself, and I feel like I'm in this darkness, and this is not an external darkness, this is the stuff that I'm carrying. So I'm in the healing modality, and I know in the back of my mind my guides are there. Please come and help me. They're not going to come and help you. I think the minute 6-7 hours passed, and I'm still going through this same journey until this light bulb clicked in my mind to say, Stephen, get up, you can do this. Yeah. And that was so empowering. And I think that's what your guides want you to do, is to empower yourself, to empower your own sovereignty. Take self-responsibility, personal responsibility for your life. And how good do you feel when you feel like that, Chris?
It's like what's been mentioned, any form of healing or reading is empowerment. That's what it is when it comes down to it. You are empowering that person to take responsibility, to step into the wisdom, and that's what your guide's there for. So I think this has been a really...
Can I just share one funny story with you? I keep saying this. One more funny story. And I think people will laugh about this, because recently, you know this, Chris, because when we work with clients, sometimes we don't see clients again. And you don't always get feedback, do you, from what you share with clients. And I remember, and this is quite funny with Spirit, because I think Spirit have got a really wicked sense of humour as well.
Yeah.
I think they do things that really... they don't always put things on a golden platter, but they're like, you talk about it all the time, Chris, a lot of breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
To say, we're not going to give you everything, but we're just going to give you a breadcrumb. And I went, this client came to see me and said, oh, recently you did a reading for my son. I said, oh, right, did you enjoy his reading? And he went, no, he thought it was a load of rubbish. Then he asked his son, oh, did your mum come through? And he said, yeah, it was all right, but no, I don't. Stephen was on about this frog. This bloody frog. What is he on about? Was he on drugs or something like this? And he was really negative. And he laughed, this client. He said, you know what happened then? He said, the next day I had another phone call from him. He said, I've just left the house. I'm so freaked out. He walked down the stairs in the morning and there was a live frog at the bottom of his stairs. How the hell did that frog get into my house? Yeah. And he sat there laughing. And he said, it got him to think, it got him to be curious and ask questions. He said there must be something out there, so it got him to think. So spirit signs can be incredibly transformational, can't they? Your guides that leave breadcrumbs.
Another side of that is, just to sort of round everything up, is quite often when you receive a good way of discerning where you receive guidance from your guide, is there'll be some sort of confirmation, physical confirmation that happens. And that might be somebody brings that up in conversation on the same day, might be a certain song comes on, might be a feather, might be something that you've seen, like there's a frog in that instance, and then you saw a frog. So, you know, there's always that natural confirmation that comes through. But I hope everybody's enjoyed this chat on spirit guides and much more.
We need to do another one, don't we, on spirit guides?
It can lead from one subject to another, but I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Please click and subscribe. Please support this podcast, and please feel free to comment and add your questions as well. So until we speak again, let's say thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Now.